welcome back to my channel. It's been a hot minute. This is current Riley now. She's not uploading past Riley videos as of now. I think that just to address my previous few videos in my Recovery Diaries series, I do have a little bit more footage that I was going to put into a part 4, but I'm not like super pleased with that footage, and I just don't think it would be a really informative slash entertaining slash good video. So I think I'm just gonna take some stuff from that video and just like talk about it, not in this video, but in a separate video, just to like whatever, because I just didn't think that it was worth a part 4 in like what I had left. Basically I just wanted to adjust that. But hello, I'm so happy to be back. I'm happy to be filming. I had some downtime. I have work in half an hour. This always ends up happening to me, but I have some downtime and I had a video that I've planned out for a couple weeks and I thought I would sit down and film it. It's a little bit different, has to do with finances, but I feel like I've learned a lot over the past 4 years in uni about how to be financially responsible, financially independent. I do quotations because I still am very grateful and fortunate enough that I do have my parents supporting me in some ways. So I just want to throw that out there just as a kind of disclaimer for the whole video that I recognize my position. I'm very privileged in my position, and I recognize that I've had a lot of benefits and privileges that other people may not have that have gotten me to the position where I am now. So I just want to say that all of the tips that I have in this video are obviously tips that have helped me, but I understand that I am not addressing socioeconomic constraints and any sort of factors that would lead to someone not having the privileges that I do. So I just wanted to put that out there, that I'm obviously coming from a very privileged place. But with that being said, I think that these are some tips that could be helpful to anyone, especially university or college aged people, where you might be dealing with trying to navigate and mitigate like finances on your own, and maybe you have a trip coming up, or you want to buy a new phone, get a car, something, and hopefully you can take some of these tips that I'm about to say that have helped me do some of the traveling that I've been so fortunate in doing over the past couple years. So as I was saying, yes, I'm going to show you a bunch of tips that have helped me save some money on some trips that I like to do. Travel is one of those things that I just love to do. I'd love to do a lot more of, and in particular I'm actually going on this kind of similar thing. So I'm going to be implementing these kinds of tips to actually go on a couple trips that I'm planning in the next few months. The first one being going to New Orleans at the end of December with a few friends for my friend's 21st birthday, and so that is a new one that I'm now trying to squeeze into my budget, on top of doing a grad trip with my housemates next February for our reading week, and that will be some sort of all-inclusive tropical vacation kind of thing. So those are 2 trips that are not cheap that I am going to be saving up for in the next few months. So I am also going to be implementing these strategies, and this is what I'm going to do to help me do this. So let's get into the first one. Okay, the first one that I 100% like think is so helpful and so important to do is to open a savings account if you don't already have a savings account. If not, open multiple savings accounts. Basically, I like to have this to have a physical kind of separation of my checking, which I will label as to use, and my savings as to keep. So how I kind of go about doing it is that every time that I get a paycheck, and I get my paychecks bi-weekly, so twice every 2 weeks, so twice a month. So every time that I get a paycheck, I put away all the money, like immediately separate and put away all the money that I got that I will not necessarily need in the next 2 weeks. And I'll go into like a few like ways how to like figure that out later, and that kind of shows you like, okay, in my checkings account, this is the money that I actually have, and this is the money that I'm actually like giving myself that I have the ability to spend if I want to. Whereas if you put it away in savings, you're kind of like mentally putting it in that box and saying, that's for my savings that I cannot touch unless for whatever reason I need to. My second tip is to become aware of how much you truly do spend. I can totally relate to this, that you just kind of day by day, here's that coffee, here's that muffin, here's that bagel, here's like I don't know, all these different random purchases that you buy. Find a way to figure out how much you're actually spending. And I know that we kind of have this like joke that, oh, like I just like don't look at my bank account and like, oh, I don't want to touch that and I whatever. But if you really want to like figure out, okay, I need to save this much money, blah 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 blah, you need to know how much you're actually spending, so you can see, okay, are there ways that like how much am I actually spending on groceries, on food, on, you know, my bills and all these kinds of things. So the way that I kind of do it is that I only use a credit card for like all of my purchases, and that helps me because I know that kind of sounds weird, but that helps me see how much I'm spending, because at the end of the month when I need to pay it off, I can see the sum total of the money that I spent. And sometimes I look at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, like did I actually spend that much money? And then I can go down and look at my breakdown and be like, okay, what was I spending all that on? But I like the idea that like at the end of the month with my credit card, I can see by sum total of spending for a month, which is more than you would think it would be. So that's how I use it. If you're not someone that has a credit card or doesn't feel like comfortable or trust yourself around having a credit card, then another helpful tip that I've heard is to take out the physical amount of money that you have budgeted to spend per week and only use that money. And the way that that works is that if you take out a certain amount of money, then you can't spend more than that money. That is unless you take out more money. But also having the physical cash actually makes you feel like you are spending money rather than having this card that kind of doesn't really feel like you're spending money. So it can kind of deter maybe like impulsive purchases that you don't necessarily need and you just kind of like on a whim kind of want to buy. So taking out physical cash is also a really helpful tip if you are trying to like, yeah, basically like watch how much you're spending per week. I think this is helpful for anyone, and it's kind of super basic, but I think that it's so important. But it is to create a budget. Just have a, even if it's a super flexible one, just some sort of like budget or structure to how much you know that you are bringing in per month, how much you know that you are spending per month, how much if you want to put away, how much you want to put away, all that kind of stuff. So the way that I do it is that I kind of list out what are my monthly must-haves, and those things would be like rent, my internet, it could be phone bills, groceries, all that kind of stuff, and list out what those per month cost and kind of gauge right now in terms of like, let's say you spend $250 on groceries a month or something like that, and maybe you think that that's a lot or not enough or whatever it is. Just write that down. Even if you think that maybe that is something that you maybe want to try to like cut down or reduce, just write it out for now, and then basically tally all that up and figure out how much that is. Then you want to calculate approximately how much you are making in a month. So for me, because I get paid bi-weekly, I can just kind of assume that is 2 paychecks. So I add up 2 paychecks, okay, that's what's coming in per month. And then subtract, basically have what you're making, and hopefully you're making more than what you're spending, but have what you're making, what you're spending, subtract that, see how much is left. And basically, depending on how much you want to save and how much you want to put away, that subtracted number, what's left is basically like, okay, the money that you technically have left basically to spend, I guess, on other things. But if you wanted to save things, then you would want to a lot, like, okay, let's say I have $400 to spare left. Okay, maybe I want to take 200 of that and put it towards my savings if I'm trying to really save up in a short amount of time or something, or for whatever reason you want to take 200 out of that. Then you have $200 allotted for kind of just other random purchases that you want. So that could be out to eat with friends, and that could be maybe some items of clothing for shopping or some whatever it is, and that is like your kind of your fun and you're like, or like not necessary kind of thing. But I should always say, and what I always do, so whenever I'm calculating these things, is I'm always rounding up, because you don't want to like cut it close and cut it short. I'd rather give myself a buffer. So let's say like I calculate everything and my monthly must-haves, or the things that are essential that I need to pay for each month, so my rent and all that kind of stuff, let's say it adds up to $980 $110 or something like that, then I would round up to 1,000, to be quite honest, because I'm just gonna like cut that and like allot that kind of $90 gap for whatever reason. Maybe your phone bill will be more expensive 1 month, maybe if it's not like a static kind of plan. So you always want to give yourself a buffer. So whenever I'm calculating these numbers, I'm always rounding up, or I'm always giving myself a little bit of a buffer. And similar thing with when you're doing the how much you make and how much you're subtracting. Maybe 1 month you don't get as many shifts, or maybe 1 month you have sick days, or whatever it is. So you just want to account for those kind of differences, and you never want to be losing money or not putting, or like not having enough for your must-haves and putting stuff away for savings and stuff. So you always want to have enough for these things, and you definitely want to create some sort of buffer. So then the next step what would be is that if you've calculated, okay, I make this much money and I subtract this, and I'm left with this amount of money, and I want to put away this amount of money per month so that I can save up for this thing or for whatever by this time. So it's kind of like, okay, let's say that you have like an iPhone that you want to buy, and let's say it's $1,000. I know it's more expensive than that, but let's say it's $1,000 and you want to put away $200 every month. So that means that you would get, basically it would take you 5 months in order to get that iPhone, to save that $1,000, because you'd be putting away $200 every month. So you can kind of figure that out, and depending how quickly you need the money and how quickly you want to save up for this trip or this item or whatever it is, then you would have to cut more of that leftover money from your subtraction, and therefore it would mean that you maybe would have less spending or fun money, if that makes sense. Kind of depends on how you want to do it and how short of time you are. Then you kind of can figure out, okay, so now that I figured out, at least in my case, because I get bi-weekly paychecks, now that I can figure out, okay, so if I want to save up $200 per month, then that means that I'm going to put away $100 from every paycheck that I earn, because that's basically half of the 200. And since I get bi-weekly paychecks, that's twice a month. So each paycheck I'm going to be putting away $100. So when I get a paycheck, immediately what I do, transfer $100 to my savings, and you're good. And that's it. That's all you have to do. And then if you do that twice, then you get $200. So therefore you've naturally saved $200 a month if you do that per paycheck. So that's just like one way to do it, instead of doing it all at the end, and maybe you ended up spending more than you thought you did during that whole month. So I find by doing it bi-weekly or per paycheck, it kind of keeps you accountable and doesn't let you kind of like think that you have all this money and then have to put it away at the end of the month. If you do it per paycheck, then it's a lot easier. So now here are just a few tips and tricks that I found that have to do with this kind of thing. The first thing is food and drinks are a major culprit for, I find, like spending a lot of money. Let's say whether it's school or work, try your best to at least pack your lunches, bring your breakfast. Try not to buy, if you're someone that buys your lunch every single day, or buys your breakfast, or breakfast and lunch every day, try to find ways that you can maybe prep your breakfast the night before, whether that be overnight oats. If you don't know what overnight oats are, I can actually link a video. There's a really helpful one. But just try to find ways to save money where you can, and food and drink is such a big one. I'm definitely guilty on the coffee front because I'm a coffee snob, and I like Starbucks over, you know, Tim Hortons or any other ones. But of course it depends on your goals, and I still let myself buy food on campus maybe a couple times a week, but it is definitely not an everyday thing. I try to bring my lunch every day, and if you are going to buy something or whatever that may be, try to buy more like breakfast or even lunch compared to dinner, because those tend to be the cheaper going out ones. Obviously completely depends, but if you do still feel like you want to treat yourself, I would definitely probably stick to a morning kind of vibe. At least in my perception, I think that like usually buying breakfast is probably cheaper than buying lunch or dinner. But of course it can depend, but try to really cut down on buying out, because that is just like, it completely drains your bank account. Second thing is, if you are a shopaholic, try to get into that thrifting trend. It is so like, I exclusively basically shopped at thrift stores, and it saved me a ton of money. And also I find it kind of fun because it's more rewarding when you are going and you're searching through these racks and racks of like kind of trashy clothes that's mostly like 90% garbage, and then you find those like one clothing items or those one items that you're like, damn, like this would have been like 80 bucks, or like this is such a good piece of clothing, and then it just like is that much more rewarding. So grab a friend, go to your local thrift store or charity shop if you're in the UK, and go shopping and try to find some cute pieces. It'll be definitely trickier because you can't just walk in and find cute stuff everywhere, but I find that kind of more rewarding and more fun. And so that's like my second tip, is to try to thrift or go to consignment stores or secondhand stores for that kind of stuff. But yeah, those are my 2 tips. I have like kind of an example budget thing that I can list out just to make this kind of more easier to understand if maybe this all seems kind of all theoretical. Let's say that you really do want to save for this one thing and it is like urgent, or you're just like really determined to get that one thing. After kind of looking at your monthly must-haves or the essentials that you're looking at, you could say, is there a way that I can actually cheapen my monthly must-haves? So those things would be your phone bill, your rent, your internet, your groceries, all that kind of stuff. Can I downgrade to a cheaper phone plan? Can I, maybe it's not as easy to change accommodations, but if you were like, I'm living in a place that's way too expensive for me, I'm going to downgrade my living situation, or I'm going to shop at this grocery store instead of this grocery store because they tend to have lower prices. So basically, if you're still short on cash and you still need money, then I would probably tap into those monthly must-haves and try to see if you can kind of cheapen those things a little bit more. And you can be like, okay, so instead of $200, I'm going to try to do $150. It totally depends on your situation, your individual circumstances. But yeah, those are my tips. But of course, like I said before, always have a buffer amount, because you never know when life will happen, or you will spend more money, or whatever it is. It will vary from month to month. So especially, let's say you're saving around December and you have Christmas presents that you need to buy, and those are things that are not included in your monthly things for September or October or November, but they are things that you need to account for. Those are all my tips for saving money and learning how to budget as a student and all that kind of stuff. Those are the tips that I've kind of figured out and used in the past 4 years of me being a student at university. If you guys would like how to save money in regards to groceries or and food and like meal prep and that kind of stuff, and kind of what I do to save money, let me know in the comments. But anyway, I hope that was helpful. Let me know in the comments what you guys are hoping to save for, and yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Bye!